Okay, I'm out here today, and I got my new 25-06 that I built. And a friend of mine, he wants to get into long-range shooting, and he actually built himself a rifle. He's got a couple other rifles, and I'm trying to teach him that he's got to weigh the brass. When you're shooting, you want your brass as close to weight as possible from round to round to round. Doing a demonstration to show the difference between heavy brass and light brass. And when you see the difference between the heavyweight and the light brass, you'll understand why you need to weigh your brass if you want to be a precision shooter. I have a little over 400 25-06 cases, and so what I did is I'm going with 300 cases, and the other ones are throwaways. But what I did is I took the three that are just underneath the lightest cases, and I took the three that are just over the heaviest cases, and I loaded those up so that I have a difference in weight. And they weigh about 2.6 grains difference between the light ones and the heavy ones. Now also, when I tuned this rifle in, I tuned it to brass that was somewhere in between, and my group size is much larger with the light and the heavyweight brass. So after I got done, I ended up fooling around with the tuner again because my group size was just unacceptable. A light round on top. That's the light brass. This is a heavy one, it goes on the bottom. Light round on top. Heavy brass on the bottom. Light brass on top. Bottom, because that's where it belongs, it's the heavy brass. Okay, on my 25-06 here, the difference between my lightest cases and the heaviest cases is about 2.6 grains. And when it gets heavier, there's only one place for that extra weight to go, and it's inside the body of the case. So the case capacity actually becomes slightly less. So what happens is, with the same powder charge, you'll get slightly higher pressure. When you get slightly higher pressure, that means the bullet's going to leave a little sooner, so under recoil, the bullet is going to leave sooner, and its point of impact will tend to be just a little bit lower than the lighter cases. Here's my 3 shots from the lighter cases. 2 of them are on the line, 1 of them is a slight bit low. Down here, all 3 of them are clearly below the line. And the point of impact is maybe a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch lower. So that is one of the reasons why you want to weigh your cases. It makes a very big difference. Also, what I did is, with the rifle, I had tuned it with cases that were somewhere in between, and I had a group that was just under 1/2 minute angle, or 1/2 inch. And when I shot the lighter group, it was 0.830 of an inch, and the heavier group was 1.174, which is telling me now with my Cortina brake tuner, as I go to each box now, because I have 6 boxes of ammo, 300 rounds, and the lightest ones to the heaviest ones, like I said, is 2.6 grains. So each box, I'm going to have to tune it to each box, and then I'm going to have to keep in my notes. So when I get out a box of ammo, look at my notes, adjust my tuner, and get it accurate. Because what happened is when I got done, that 0.830 group, because I'm starting with the lightest 50 rounds of cases, that 0.83 group is not going to cut the mustard. So I tuned it in one direction, and it got slightly smaller, 0.8, but I tuned it in the other direction too. I went 2 different directions, and it was just over 1/2 inch, 525. So I tuned it all the way down, and I got it so I can't adjust it anymore, and it's at 0.4 of an inch, which I know this gun can do. I'm confident, I believe, I hope, this gun can do better than that. As I go on down the road, I'm going to play with the tuner more, because I this is the first time I've ever played with a tuner. But what's going to happen is with this .42, because this is the lighter group, when I get to the heavier group, Lord knows where the grouping will be. And then also downrange, you know, at 100 yards, a half an inch ain't no big deal. If you're out hunting 200 yards, you know, that's not really going to make a bit of a difference. But when you're shooting at 1,000 yards, a half inch becomes 5 inches. At 2,000 yards, that becomes 10 inches. So your point of impact will really shift between the light bullets and the heavy bullets. And where I got turned on to this is my father, he weighs all his cases. He doesn't have very many of them. And he starts from the lowest to the highest, or he either goes the highest to the lowest. And that way, as we're shooting, if all of a sudden he starts hitting low or hitting high, you know, he makes an adjustment on his gun, but then the rounds that are around that come after that, will be back on the target again. And watching him weighing his cases before he was reloading them and the way that he does it taught me a lesson. And so what I do, I have enough cases, so I weigh them all. So each box, the worst box, I think they're 3 or 4 tenths of a grain between the lightest and the heaviest, and the best box, which I'm using right now, is 2 tenths from the lightest to the heaviest. So it's going to be interesting with me playing with this Cortina brake. It's going to be a real tool that's going to help me out down the road. And another thing that I did too, after I learned what my father was doing with my old 25-06 that's got the burned out barrel, but it still shoots pretty good, I did some shooting between light cases and heavy cases, and I noticed the point of impact shifted, and I also noticed that the group size on one of them was 50% bigger. So there really is something to weighing the cases. I do it on my 30-06. On my 338 Lapua, I don't have enough brass, so what I do is the same thing that my father does. I weigh all the cases, so I go lightest to the heaviest. And if you were to go watch my 1.25 video with my 338 Lapua on my 12-inch by 18-inch targets, in 3 shots, boom, I was just high, boom, knocked it over. And that's what happens when you weigh your cases, is your velocity is much more consistent. And then if you watch my 1.25 video with my 300 blackout pistol, my Thompson Contender with a 15-inch barrel on that, all those cases weighed the same amount. So since my scale goes to only 0.1, they're all within a tenth of a grain of each other. All those cases weighed the same. And it pays off when you really start throwing long range, because your velocities are more consistent. And once your load is tuned with that weight of case, you can really go places with it. Okay, that's one of the things I do on the reloading bench that makes a difference when you get out to distance. And that's why I'm able to shoot at a target that's only 12 inches wide by 18 inches tall once I get past a mile. And the reason why I shoot at this size target is because if I do hit it and knock it over, that means I made an effective shot. If my target was 4 foot wide by 6 foot tall, it just means I hit a big target. Where my targets show that I made an effective shot. And one of the things is weighing the brass. That becomes very important at distance. And remember, if your rounds are stringing up and down, most likely you've got a velocity problem. That is at distance. You won't see it much at 100 yards. If they're stringing left and right, well, you probably, like me, have a problem reading the wind. And if you got the target kind of surrounded, well, either you need to tune your load to your rifle better, or get better behind the trigger, or a combination of that. But what it boils down to is, if you want to get serious, the little things like weighing your brass is going to make the difference.